Good afternoon. This is Stafford Pete from the New England Board of Higher Education. I'm joined this afternoon with Monica Chan, who is sort of my partner in crime at this point. And from uh, Khan Academy, we have Naomi Davidson, who is joining us from California, and our
Hello.
implementation coach, Tim O'Connor. You might want to say hello, Tim, as well.
Well, hello, Tim. Oh, no. Hello, everyone. How are you?
Um, Thank you all for joining us. We have hopefully an interesting and action-packed webinar that will run through 2 o'clock. I'd like to go, if I may, just go quickly through the agenda, and we do have one small change in the agenda. So leading off will be Naomi Davidson, who is going to um, go through the new Khan Academy dashboard, as well as provide some additional updates and changes that are being planned for the Khan Academy site, as well as some additional updates she'd like to share with us about a couple of projects. Um, Naomi will be followed by Tim O'Connor, who is going to really walk us through some implementation models that are emerging and may be very useful for replication for the fall of 2014 semester. The agenda item that we're not ready to report on right now is the report on year one outcomes. We have a few institutions we haven't received the spring data from, as well as student surveys. So we're going to have to hold off on that agenda item. However, replacing that agenda item is lessons learned, not only lessons that we've learned through our observations, but we're hoping to get feedback from you all about your lessons that you've learned about what works, what doesn't work, what level of support is most useful, and that will be followed by a few updates that we'd like to share with you. Um, and that's the webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Naomi Davidson.
Hi. Sorry, just taking myself off of mute. Okay, thank you, Tim. I mean, thank you, Stafford. Sorry. Okay, so I wanted to give you all a sense of one of the really big changes that's happening on Khan Academy over the summer. And there's a lot of changes going on, and I'll try to give you a little bit of a feel for what's happening. But mostly, the big um, kind of point that I'd like to make is that the majority of the changes that are happening right now are mostly user interface related, meaning that we're trying to clean up our website in a way that makes it easier to navigate, easier to find things, more holistic, and the rest of that. So the big change is really around what we're calling the universal dashboard. And right now you're looking at like literally the latest and greatest version of it that is a kind of beta testing version, but it's pretty close to what's going to actually be launched. So I just wanted to give you all a sense or a feel for what it looks like, so that as you start getting exposed to various pieces of it, it'll feel somewhat familiar. Um, but essentially, the idea with the Universal Dashboard is to bring together all of the subjects that you can learn on Khan Academy and kind of give you a learning portfolio that's more holistic from the start. So instead of being, dropped into learning math, that you actually have the ability to kind of put all of the pieces of the puzzle of what you're trying to learn on one page and then delve into math or delve into whatever area that you're interested in exploring. So up on the left here, I just want to point out that we have a new feature that you'll be able to kind of toggle between your learner view and your coach view. You can also, there's still the coach button up at the top, but this little toggle here on the learner home will allow you to kind of switch your home page view, depending on what behavior you're sort of in or mode you're in. And then You can search for topics at the top here for whatever you want to learn, and that's kind of all very, very much sort of similar functionality as I mentioned. It's just how it's being organized. And then the really exciting part is that your dashboard now has all the pieces of what you've been tracking against on the page. And so here I've got some materials from my coach and classroom resources. The percentage finished is being represented by how many of the articles or videos I've watched. And then very interestingly, that sort of looks similar but is a little bit different for subjects where we have missions. So for the arithmetic, as you all probably know, we now have math missions. We have Algebra 1, Arithmetic, Algebra 2, Pre-Algebra, Pre-Calculus, all of those missions on Khan Academy. So when there's a mission that can be mastered, that'll show some of your mastery progress, and it'll show the amount of skills that you've completed in that. Versus art history, where this is another area where we don't have a mission, but we have videos and we have articles, so it'll show a sense of completion. So that's one of the ways that you'll see the difference between an area where we have the mastery and the mission-based approach set up already on the universal dashboard. So that's kind of a high-level view of it. And one thing that I'll also point out that you're seeing on this page is that you're seeing subject areas that I've added, but there's also maybe a particular topic area that I'm able to add to my dashboard. So it's kind of got a little bit more levels of granularity than we used to have before. So if I want to not learn all of arithmetic, but I just want to focus on ratios, proportions, and rates, that's something that I can do. So, so that's that. And I'm going to now delve into what happens when you click on arithmetic and sort of explore from that perspective. Unless there's any questions, I'll pause. Cool. And if you have any questions, if you want to chat them and maybe Stafford can pass them along to me, that's great too. So here's what happens, or what you'll see when you click into the mission view, and probably some of you are already seeing various versions of this right now. But essentially, the same kind of skills and recommended skills are showing up. Your mastery challenges are on the right-hand side. So the formatting is switched a little bit, hopefully to make it a little clearer. So a lot of the changes, as I mentioned on this view, are really around making it more readable. So your coach recommendations will continue to come in first. And in fact, if you make a recommendation from a mission outside of arithmetic, that will still show up on my arithmetic mission dashboard. But it'll tend to focus, without any intervention from a coach, it'll tend to focus on just what I'm either recommending for myself or what the platform is recommending to me. So you can see that this is what the platform is recommending to me to count to 100 and comparing size. So on the left now we have kind of a quick view of my mission progress. So instead of looking at what we affectionately called the bathroom tiles on the right, which was hard to add up what your overall progress was there, now you can see that I've got 18 skills mastered. I've got nothing on level 2 or level 1. I have 1 skill practice, and I have 99 skills yet to do. So I've got a lot of work to do in arithmetic. And you can see, the badges that are at least, kind of most nearest to me that I might, focus on pushing toward or endeavoring toward. So that's kind of the trying to bubble it up and make it kind of a quicker and easier view of what's available to me to learn. And then, kind of very importantly, especially I think, and Tim will talk about this more when he gets into some of the implementation models, I think the bathroom tile view is still very helpful, and it's still there, but you have to kind of, it'll default to hiding it to just sort of simplify the overall look of the page, but if you click Show All Skills, it'll come back up. And here's what you'll see, a kind of, a double click on what that looks like if you kind of delve in. And the same kind of overall functionality exists. You can hide it again if you want to, if it's too much to look at. But if it's actually something you're using, that same functionality of being able to kind of hover over a skill to get a preview to see what your status is in terms of whether or not that skill is mastered or practiced, or which level of mastery you've achieved with it will still be there. So you can hover to preview, as I'm kind of showing an example of here, or you can actually click on it to add it to your recommended list. So on the previous page, the way that I added these was to click on those tiles. So that is a kind of detail of the mission progress view. And again, I'll sort of pause. Are there any questions? Great. So kind of going back to the mission view, there's the what we've often called at Khan Academy is the library view, which is sort of a view that we all, maybe for those people who've been using Khan Academy for over a year, would also know as kind of maybe more of almost a textbook view, and that's still available for everything, whether it has a mission or not. And what you do to find that is you go up here to the right-hand corner and you see the view full list of arithmetic content. So it's defaulting to the mission view, but if you want to see the, sort of more library view, if you will, you can do that. And so you simply click that, and it takes you to the library view. And you can still see your progress within that by kind of seeing how much of this circle is filled in. And again, if you want to go back, you just go to get a personal path through arithmetic up in the upper right-hand corner, and that takes you back to your mission view. So all the same basic functionality. It's just really about trying to make things a lot easier to navigate, a lot more clear, a lot more intuitive. And then I just wanted to show you that it defaults to the library view when there is no mission. So as you saw in that previous, when you looked at my universal dashboard, I had art history on there. And so this is what would happen. This is what I would see if I clicked through to art history. I would just be default put into a library view. So for some of the higher level maths, beyond integral calculus, where we're going to have a mission up through integral calculus as of August. And so if anything beyond that linear algebra, you would be dropped into a view that looks like this. So that is, those are the big things that are like the huge changes, I would say, that are happening on Khan Academy around the universal dashboard. And again, I'll just sort of pause for a moment to see if there are any questions about that. Comments. Great. And then, kind of getting to general changes and updates. This is one of those things that I say, and I know that it's not necessarily good news, but the truth of the matter is that the Khan Academy is always, trying to learn and adapt and improve. And so as part of that, we have our sort of summer testing period that's really going on in full force right now. So I'm fairly sure that, some of you are seeing changes to your accounts on a somewhat regular basis right now if you're in there using them. And so, that's definitely, part of what's going on right now as the team is endeavoring to really try to figure out a lot of different things about the platform that are going to help us find a student's learning edge faster, for example. Stafford was just asking about what about getting 5 in a row correct, and there's a bunch of testing going on with that. So there's a lot of tests underway right now. Those should all be determined and kind of nailed down to a much more stable state. We're always changing and adapting throughout the year, but this sort of higher level of activity really will, come to a rest in August. And so, we were talking about setting up another update in August, and I guess we can figure out what the best format is for that. But I'll definitely want to get you all an update about that and where we've landed for a lot of those things. And then another really fun piece of sort of what's going on right now, so this is more of an update piece of information, is I'm running a competition with Phi Theta Kappa right now. And for those of you who don't know what Phi Theta Kappa is, it's the Honor Society for Community Colleges.
Naomi, this is Stafford. I was wondering whether or not you could mention the use of pop-ups as help for students. I think Tim observed when he was on the site a few weeks ago that he got a pop-up, which was really helpful. And I think some of the other faculty members who have been using Khan Academy may have seen a similar pop-up. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Are you referring to you may be using terminology that maybe we're using different terminology at Khan Academy. Can you
Hints?
say a little bit more? Oh, the hints. Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
yes. So you maybe got a pop-up to use the hint. Is that the idea?
I think also, Naomi, the how to learn button on the exercises.
Yeah. So we've always had a hint. Show me how. We changed some of the names and the titles of it, and so I guess this is a lot of the thing that is in deep testing mode right now. So we're probably all seeing various interesting things happening, and around hints. So getting back to the 5 in a row correct, for example, one of the pieces that we've discovered around that is that, as I was mentioning on the call a little bit earlier, is that students often feel a sense of frustration or a sense of fear around this sort of high stakes moment when they're trying to get that last question, and whether or not they're going to get it correct. And so what we've been looking at is ways to create support for them to continue to grapple with the question, to still keep that bar of learning really high, but to provide a way for them to explore, to validate their understanding without kind of making it feel like it's a bad thing to take a hint at that point. So what we've been experimenting with is providing a worked example as a kind of freebie. We're also looking at ways to try to encourage people to take hints. So it sounds like Tim got a pop-up saying, hey, take a hint. And then so sort of making those hints that are available on questions more visible and kind of drawing people's attention to them more. So did that answer your question?
So I just unmuted myself. Thank you. There was a show me a worked problem button that you had referred to. Although the pop-up, when I just clicked on the practice exercises, the work problem pop-up popped up, and when you X out of that, you see where it came from. So I'm sure that was just in beta, but it reminds me, I'm not going to get off task here at all, but it reminds me of that text et idea we talked about, a mini text piece in there. So, but anyway, that's what that was.
Yeah, and that's actually another piece where, that sort of text et concept, that was something that we got from you, Tim, and it was really something that aligned very well with other ideas that were coming from, other areas of development, which was this idea that we wanted to make it a lot easier for people to search for ideas or concepts that they're trying to learn on Khan Academy. So that sort of text et idea is being implemented in kind of a lot of different ways, and one is around kind of the searchability of exercises and kind of going back through and doing a revision of our hints and making sure that the worked examples and hints kind of have a good set of descriptors in there, and that they're clear and they're concise, and they've got a nice little descriptor in there that can be easily searchable. So we sort of saw a few stones that we could try to, or a few birds that we could try to hit with one stone on that one. So, but that's another one where it's they're still ironing it out, and I think by the end of August we'll have a nice set of, here's where they landed, and here's what we're doing to kind of really pull that through the whole system.
Great.
Great. Any other questions on testing that's underway or features that you've been seeing? Or? Cool. So yes, as I was mentioning with Phi Theta Kappa, we are doing, Khan Academy and Phi Theta Kappa are doing a tutoring competition, and the idea here is to test a couple of things. One is to see what happens if we try to really excite the students to help, in the process of teaching. So there's so much science that says that, your learning is hugely accelerated when you're teaching something, and then another piece that says, peer learning and collaborative learning is highly effective for students in terms of their graduation rates and their success rates in college, and in terms of creating a social environment that they feel comfortable in, and also just sort of accelerating their learning by, being able to grapple with issues and talk through concepts with their peers. So the idea was, hey, let's just sort of try this out and see if we can encourage some of that behavior on Khan Academy. And so I've launched this Phi Theta Kappa tutoring competition. And if you're interested, let me know. But in general, I am desperately seeking people who need any tutoring this summer because we have a lot of very eager honors students at Phi Theta Kappa, and they're struggling a little bit, to be honest, to find people to mentor. And so, yes, so I'm out there trying to help in that capacity for them. And then another piece, moving on to the next bullet, is around a big piece of feedback, again, that we've gotten just over and over again, and something that I think, as all of us do site visits, it's really visually apparent about just the need for some kind of diagnostic assessment. And so one of the things that we are in beta testing right now and kind of building with a group is a math placement diagnostic, and it's an external tool that we're working with an external nonprofit who's building has built a diagnostic assessment based on placement tests and the cut scores of various of colleges and universities in their degree programs. So they've built this diagnostic, and they are now mapping it to Khan Academy study materials so that we'll be able to provide a tool for colleges who want to, say, get a diagnostic assessment of what where the student is and where they need to be in order to place into your algebra courses at your college, and a Khan Academy study plan to get there. So that's a really exciting thing, and we hope that it's going to be ready. It was supposed to be ready right about now, but as development processes always go, it's a little bit late, but we will be in beta testing mode sometime this summer. So if you're interested in beta testing that, give me a call or send a note to Stafford and have him connect you to me, because we'll be very interested in doing that with you. And then another thing that's kind of really interesting and exciting is doing some work with Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, and looking at how the Khan Academy materials and assessments can actually help with the Quantway and Statway curriculum. And so we're in kind of pilot design mode and exploring that with a few of their Quantway, Statway, these sort of more innovative colleges and universities who are using those materials. And then finally, the piece that many of you may have heard about is that West Ed was awarded a $3 million grant from the Department of Education to do a randomized study and an implementation analysis of Khan Academy. And so the idea is that they, want to do this randomized study because that's how grants get awarded, but the group is really particularly interested in what are the factors of a successful implementation, and to what extent can we measure and quantify that? So can we define it, and can we measure and quantify, the relative impact of, say, for example, working toward mastery in a given mission versus, maybe just working on a practice, or how to incentivize students, so whether or not it's being used as a primary resource or a supplementary resource. So I think this is actually a really nice segue into the implementation materials that Tim is going to go through. But one of the things that I think they're going to be looking at is, is there a kind of a gold standard of applying Khan Academy, and what are the real outcomes that you see if you apply that kind of gold standard from an implementation perspective? So it's really fascinating and really exciting. It'll be a 3-year study. The data is probably only going to start to come out in the final year of the study, because they're actually investing quite a bit of energy up front in terms of defining and understanding what the implementation model elements will be. So happy to answer any questions about that too.
So Naomi will take questions.
I see a question from Laura at CCV. So Laura, I'm going to unmute you now. Hi, Laura. Laura, are you there?
I can't unmute.
Oh, no, you are unmuted.
Oh, okay, perfect. I am unmuted.
Go ahead, Laura.
Sorry, I was trying to close one other conference call and join this one, so life is full here. So the WestEd study, what age group is going to be included?
Oh, it's actually specifically, I'm sorry, I didn't mention, it's specifically focused on community colleges in Algebra 1 course, a kind of basic algebra course.
A basic algebra or Algebra 1? College level or pre-college?
Pre-college.
Okay. And will they, when they do the implementation analysis, are they ultimately going to have options for implementation? I mean, this is really getting to what we're wrestling with here and trying to make any sense of the data that we have besides do no harm. There's so much variation in how things are rolled out, and certainly that was reinforced in the earlier SRI study about K-12 use of Khan Academy, that you can't really say anything about Khan yet. And so how clear will the standards expect to be for implementation in that study? Do you know?
Yes, I do. I mean, well, I know that I don't know the details of exactly where we'll come out, but I know that, for example, they're working pretty closely with us to try to learn what are the parameters that we know already need to be, at least defined and fixed at various levels, right? To like measure, are you using the videos and exercises, and are you working toward mastery, for example? Is there an incentive system? All of these kind of basic parameters that we would say, kind of what a high fidelity model
Naomi,
is, if you will.
I think you've cut out, unless everybody else heard you and it was just us.
Sorry, what part cut out?
Oh no, you're back.
Okay, so I was saying that I know that that they're working with us to kind of define what the parameters are of, like materials, incentives, grading systems, what kind of practice or mastery you're working toward, and then we'll pilot those, and I'm happy to keep everybody in the loop in terms of what we're defining or what we're going to pilot. But even now at Khan Academy, we've been running a tremendous amount of what we're calling validation studies with Idaho in the K-12 environment to sort of be a follow-on to the SRI, kind of as you mentioned. And so we're developing some sort of data and analysis on what are the elements of a higher fidelity implementation as well. And one of the things that we're finding in our data, truthfully, is that time invested, for example, is not a good indicator of learning outcomes on Khan Academy. Learning outcomes outside of Khan Academy. So when if you know that students are just spending 45 minutes a week, that's something, but you don't necessarily know what they're spending those 45 minutes on. So we're actually, and that seems intuitive, but we're getting some good data that's showing that yes, in fact, just time is not a good indicator. Mastery is, though, but mastery, with the caveat that it's mastery of the relevant material is showing a correlation to learning positive learning outcomes in terms of test taking. So we are seeing some really good correlation there. So at this point, that looks like that's probably the number one factor in a high fidelity implementation, is working toward mastery within the curriculum that's relevant.
Is there any kind of, even a 1 or 2 pager summary of the things that you are discovering, even in a very rough sense, but at least in a more slightly beyond anecdotal sense, that we could share with staff here?
That's a great question. We are literally wrapping up some of our analysis that we've been doing on a pretty exhaustive overhaul of stuff with Idaho, and I've been thinking similarly that would be some interesting or insightful information to share. So let me cycle back with my team, and I think that would be great if we could do that, yes. And as you say, kind of beyond anecdotally. I know 100% for sure I can do it anecdotally, but I need to double check about sharing some of the data. But yes, definitely, I'll check on that.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Laura. What I'd like to do is to see if there are any additional questions, because I think we have a nice transition to Tim O'Connor, who will be talking really about implementation models. I think, and once again, I think he's really going to be talking for implementation models based on the context of not only teaching his own course, but also talking to other community college faculty members, both in Hampshire as well as at the Community College of Vermont. So once again, I'm going to give you a few seconds to ask your question. Um, any additional questions you may have of Naomi?
And you can raise your hand or type it in the question box or the chat box. I think what I learned from Laura is that I need to unmute you manually here from our end in Boston. So if you do have a question, definitely type it in or raise your hand so we can see it.
Oftentimes you don't know who's on the audience, but we have a wide variety of individuals. I think we're up to about 14 or 15 individuals who've joined us this afternoon. And unfortunately, I would love to introduce you, but we just don't appear to have the time to do that. So, absent any additional questions, I'd like to turn this over to Tim O'Connor.
Hi there, thank you. That was great, Naomi. It is, in fact, a perfect segue, and Laura, too, as well, mentioning the SRI study. A lot of what we've found now coming into this after multiple semesters, and the SRI study as well has found that, pulling quantitative data from a massive amount of implementation possibilities is akin to herding cats. There's just not a lot of qualitative data you can pull from something like that. So what I've tried to do here is put together a simplified approach to implementation models. I'll explain all that as I go on. And to save time, if you want to use your chat box and put in those questions, and then Monica or Stafford can log those and we can take them at the end, that would be helpful. So what I'll try to do here is I'm going to look at two major implementation models and thinking about how to choose a model based on your intended outcome as an instructor and your students' needs based on what you're asking them to do. So we'll take it from there. So essentially, and I'll try to pause between each slide so that you have a minute or two or a moment to read them. So basically, there are three ways that you can think about implementing. There are more, but these are, again, simplified three ways. If you're using Khan Academy as a self-study resource, a tool just for support, or you're trying to meet a full semester set of course objectives. So generally, you can begin to kind of vet that into, well, if I'm going to use it just as a self-study resource, that might be great for if I'm prepping students for AccuPlacer, or I just want to supplement what I'm doing in a, let's call it a conventional classroom. The other method, if you're going to use it to support study, that works really well with students who are self-pacing or need extra support. So with the models that I'll present to you here in a moment, you can see that students can loop back or move ahead based on their knowledge gaps or their motivation to move on. This kind of implementation can work really well in a boot camp situation and would work well with targeted playlists, and I'll be talking about that as we move ahead. If you're dealing with full semester course objectives, a developmental math course or a technical training course, then you might want to ramp it up a little bit into using a blended learning approach and the missions. So what you're doing in choosing a model is you're going to base it on your intended outcomes. And what I mean by that is it's sort of like there's a pedagogical system of curriculum. You start out with identifying what are you trying to assess, first of all, more so than what you're trying to teach. In other words, what are your primary assessment goals? And then you can go ahead and plan on how you're going to assess those. Once you've done that sort of upfront thinking, that's when you can go ahead and decide, well, which implementation model works best in light of your needs or my needs as an instructor and your student needs. So thinking about what you're trying to assess, here's four possibilities. You may be you may be looking just, Khan Academy calls it the Swiss cheese holes. You might just be looking for gaps. You might be trying to motivate or identify learning challenges students have, or you might be interested in meeting a full set of course objectives and, of course, content mastery, which we'll talk about a little more. Time on task, Naomi mentioned, versus mastery. So when you're thinking about diagnostic gaps, you think in terms of, well, I need to do a targeted intervention here. And so that would be a great place for a playlist, and I'll talk about that again. If you're looking for learning challenges, obviously your data analytics, your student data analytics, your student real-time progress data is invaluable. But then you have all sorts of let's say non-cognitive approaches you can take with little competitions and energy points and collaboration in the classroom and ways to inspire. And then meeting course objectives, again, is customized curriculum mapping or missions, and then the mastery challenges for content mastery. So these are just some possibilities. Of course, you're free to assess in any way you deem fit, but I like to use pre and post AccuPlacer scores as bookends, just so I can see progress from a standardized kind of point of view. Pencil, paper, homework, quizzes, and tests, I've never done away with them. We were talking with Monica earlier today about throwing out the baby with the bathwater as we move closer and closer to using Khan Academy in a more substantial way, or in more substantial ways. And students and instructors alike, I think, for the most part, using good old pencil and paper is a sort of it's a comfort zone, and it's another way to assess and a way that people are familiar with. In terms of weekly Khan Academy homework, and this is the point that Naomi made, one way to get a weekly grade, a homework grade, is you assign a certain number of minutes, and then you figure out, and it's very easily done through the reports, the numbers completed as a percentage of the numbers assigned. So that can be motivational, it can be inspirational, but it can also lend an accountability factor to the student, like, oh gee, I need to have this many minutes in. But as Naomi said, the early Khan Academy analytics have not found a correlation between this and student success. So again, as I go into my 5th semester using this, I think I still will use time on task, but in a much different way than I have in the past. Mastery check-in, where the early Khan Academy analytics have indicated a correlation with student success. That can be checked in the data, in the student progress reports as well, quite easily. It's a bar chart situation. We're not getting into the specifics of the technical uses of the platform today. That can come in other trainings, but that's easily checked, percentage of mastery. In fact, it's on the new universal dashboard, if I'm not mistaken. And so that, I think, is where, if in terms of quantifying a grade, you can start to work out systems to do that. So what we're recommending at this point is a blend of time on task with mastery challenges, and this is a blend of student accountability and some more rigorous evidences of learning. So in the spirit of simplicity, I'm breaking down the implementation possibilities to 2 major subcategories, either using Khan Academy as a supplement or using it in a full class. And then that's where the blended learning tool comes in. There is lots of crossover in this as to what systems or capabilities you use when, but just generally speaking, if you are using Khan Academy to prepare students for an exam, then you might want, I think you will want, an organized set of playlists or curriculum maps and study plans for your student. Not so much the missions here, I don't think. And then again, that may just be opinion, but I think in the supplemental world, you're looking for a more targeted approach. I called the second category blended learning, but that's basically when you're trying to meet full semester course objectives. And here, Khan Academy has found the correlation with success. And you can see in that bullet where it says consider using missions, it also includes playlists, curriculum maps, and student plans. So what I'm trying to say here is that those playlists are important in any event. So based on, I'll just backtrack a little bit, based on your needs analysis and your intended outcomes and your student needs, and then which way you're using it as a supplement or as a primary resource or a blended resource with a text, then you choose your most appropriate possibility for implementation. So we'll talk a little bit about the supplemental implementation side. And with playlists, they're simply a list of skills and videos to study. And I've got it bold and italic because it's especially important for students who are not using missions. We've gotten a little bit of feedback recently from students who have said, oh, it's just there's no rhyme or reason, it jumps around too much. And you know, that could be a factor of the instructor in that situation. He or she didn't really lay it out for their students. So I think it's very important to provide them with a clear set of expectations and tools they need, so get as much guesswork out of their learning as possible. And so again, I recommend for all implementation models a set of playlists. There's some common types you can choose or make. If you just want to get some basic foundations in, you might pick the top 20 skills of the course. If you are focused on a unit, you might pick the top 5 or 10 skills that you deem the most important for that unit and give that as a playlist. Targeted topics for test prep. And for differentiating, you can build 2 playlists, basic and advanced, so that people can self-pace, move ahead, loop back as necessary, work the 2 playlists, or if you're grouping with special needs students, or you have 2 lists to work with. If you're running a project, you can use a prerequisite set of skills to complete it.
Tim, before you transition to the next slide, I noticed that Laura has a question again, so I just unmuted her, if that's okay.
Oh, I thought we were just going to type in questions, but my box is gone, so I don't want to interrupt Tim's presentation. I'll wait till later. I'll jot it down later. Keep going, Tim.
We'll get back to you. Okay, great. Thank you, Laura. So in terms of the supplementation model again, we're looking at playlists and curriculum maps. So the way you create a playlist or a curriculum map, and this again goes back to what Naomi said when she was showing us the new universal dashboard, you identify your skills and concepts. So she showed how you can hover over a tile, you'll get an example of what that problem is. You can then quickly identify, yes, I need this, or yes, my students need this or not, and you can vet those.
You can ask about correlations because Tim used the word correlation.
You can decide in a quick snapshot of whether or not you want the skill. You find those relevant skills by clicking on them and adding to them, or a couple of the old school ways. You could actually write down the titles and assign them and let them search for them, which is a little cumbersome. Or you can create live Word docs similar to the ones we've done on the NEBI DMDP site that Amanda has done for us, and a number of people. Actually, Teresa, you're on the line. You did some nice work recently that I've had a chance to work with. So you can create these documents that are live links off a Word document. You can hand those out to the students. You can email it to them. You can copy and paste those links into your Moodle or Blackboard platform. So there's simplified ways to create these playlists. But no matter how you do it, the student guidance part is really crucial. Helping them to set goals, what the topics are, what the homework is, how much time they have, all that stuff still has to stay in place, and I think that would go a long way to perhaps answering that one question that student had said that it just doesn't have any rhyme or reason. So you can have specific due dates, but you can also allow self-pacing with a targeted completion time. For instance, we have what we call essential objectives, where I teach at Community College of Vermont, and I know I have to meet those objectives according to my contract. But I'm free to teach them, scaffold them any way I see fit, and give the students the opportunity to move ahead or loop back. So self-pacing within a guided framework of time and expectations works really well. And then of course they get to work, and they should know that they can self-check progress. You're checking their progress all the time, but nothing like a good old self-check. And so I haven't done this, but you could actually have some reflection things built into the course where you're checking, they're self-checking, and that sort of thing. Coach recommendations would probably work well here with playlists just to keep the students on task. So blended learning is easily defined. It can be used on the supplemental side, certainly, but it seems to work best in a full course scenario. So what it basically does, if you're not sure the definition, it combines live instruction with computer-based or internet activities. So it can involve moving some classroom activities online. That's the flipped classroom idea, which we could have a discussion about at some point, but that's where the lecture happens at home and the activities happen in class. I found that works for some, but not for others, student-wise, and can be used occasionally, just my opinion. But blended learning does join the best aspect of both live and online instruction. So what you have is classroom time to engage students in advanced interactive experiences. So the online portion, you have many things you can do, but I just came up with 3 short ones here. You can give an assignment to prepare the students for the next class, or that's a place where students can work ahead or look back at home, or you can also have individualized assignments to meet individual student needs. So that's sort of a brief definition of what blended learning can do for you. In terms of using the missions, and again, here's where I say if you're in a full course scenario, what missions can do is to guide, give, help. There's some audio. There we go. There were some audio things going on there. I don't know if you lost me for a minute. I hear a lot of static in the back. So missions basically can do 4 things. They can guide, give, help, or let. So the missions, like a playlist, thank you. The missions, like a playlist, are a guide for your students, but they're not so broad as like the world of math mission, but each of the arithmetic, the pre-algebra, the algebra missions, they're broad. So I was doing a webinar a while back on what I called back mapping, where you can hover over those tiles and decide which of the missions fit your course objectives or your essential objectives. But a few other things that missions do is they really give students a compelling goal to reach. We're gonna make the mission and that sort of thing. So they're motivational, and those tiles are great because not only you but the students can see their learning gaps. What haven't I accomplished yet? So it's very visual and very tactile because of the hovering and the clicking and adding them to your own recommendations or a coach using them with coach recommendations. And they again allow for self-pacing. So a couple of ways to use missions alongside your curriculum. You can align them to your course objectives, as we said, and then students have the choice, or you give the students a choice to use them in class or out of class. And then you can also use them, and this is where that overlap part I was referring to, you can use the missions as a supplement, picking and choosing the parts and pieces that you want. Coach recommendations work really well here to help guide the students through those missions. So as you check their real-time student data and you see their learning gaps, then you can send them those coach recommendations. So if you're in a blended learning environment, there's just a few ways you might go about it. Monica and staff and I observed an instructor in Vermont who did a great job with student rotation and lab rotation. So if you're in a computer lab, you can have stations where you can have individuals or small groups working on a specific set of tasks with targeted playlists or targeted assignments, or small group seminar with instructor while the other students are working on their lists. A lab rotation, if you have two classrooms or you don't have a computer lab, but you have access to one, and then you can toggle back and forth between classroom time and computer lab time. And however you want to engineer the lab time, small groups or whole groups, assigned or self-paced, is up to the implementation plan that you're using. Interactive is everyone in a room, instructor-led, but the instructor then differentiates, self-pace, helps self-pace, assigns work through the objectives, and then you can group. And that's another great way when you check those progress reports on which of your students are where for that day after you've assigned certain things to them. That's where you can break down into strugglers, level oneers, masters, and then hook those people together, or deploy or employ a peer tutor, which is great. Peer tutoring is another topic, but it's a great way to use Khan Academy. So just a few thoughts in summary. If you were at all confused by my presentation, I understand, because teaching is a craft, and Khan Academy is just a tool. You are still the instructor, and if you've been in the game for a while, you know that it's part art and it's part science. You have certain rules, regulations, and pedagogical techniques, but you're thinking on your feet. So plan ahead, choose your implementation path based on the needs analysis and those things I mentioned. But given that, stay flexible, change your strategies to meet the changing needs of your students. Stay focused. It's yoga. It's your yoga. Find the sweet spot. Alert, but not rigid. Relaxed, but not lethargic. That's the sweet spot. And stay with your students. So you are a teacher and a student. You need to learn well and teach well. In closing, ongoing support that we can provide for you. We can give you introduction and orientation to Khan Academy platform capabilities and updates on new site enhancements. So as things change, I can be helping you out. And if you're new to this, we can just get you started. And then we can break out into smaller intermediate workshops where we can help you do the needs analysis, help you choose an implementation model, help you with managing that implementation, and helping you learn how to best use those student progress reports. So there's my contact information. You can email, phone me, or I'll come visit. And so if there are any questions, this would be a great time.
Oh, so that's when I unmute Laura. Thank you, Tim. I apologize there for the delay. Laura, are you there? Laura?
Hello.
So Laura, I've unmuted you, but if you still have your question, definitely jump in at any time. In the meantime, I'm going to transition back to sort of the rest of our agenda here. Just one note here, we're running a little bit short on time, so if people are willing to stay a little bit past 2, that would be great. We are recording the webinar, so if you cannot stay, completely understand. It's a busy time of year. So with that, Laura, if you don't have your question anymore, I think we're gonna
move on.
We're gonna move on.
So thank you very much, Tim. That was a wonderful presentation, and once again, we're going to have the whole webinar posted to our website, and I'll let you know when that's going to happen. The other is that we're going to send you Tim's slides because, as you may have noticed, some of Tim's slides got cut off. So, and with that, I want to just preface an opportunity for an honorarium for faculty members. What we've seen so far is that there, I think Laura alluded to, we have very, very different implementation models, and some of those implementation models may vary semester to semester, because as faculty practice using Khan Academy, they get more facile using it, and they end up changing how they're using it in their classroom. It's sort of a big lesson we've learned. I think some of the other learning that we've done is that learning styles matter. And finally, the infamous textbook. Most faculty members and a lot of students we've heard from still like the notion of using a textbook. So with that as an introduction, I'd like to talk about an opportunity for faculty to earn, and this is going to this is, I wish it was $1,000, but it's unfortunately a small honorarium. It's only $100, and this is getting back to the issue that Tim raised, which is really around uh, sticking to an implementation plan and providing us with an opportunity of checking in with you throughout the course of the semester, um, as well as answering some far more in-depth questions that couldn't be answered in a teacher survey or an instructor survey, rather. Um, so we'll provide more information about this because I know we don't have a tremendous amount of time, but we will provide a template. And I think, to be fair, once you see the template and the commitment, we're going to be asking faculty members whether or not they're interested in working with us in this little project, and hopefully we'll be able to take those learnings and translate those into useful hints for other faculty members who plan on using Khan Academy in the future. So stay tuned. We'll provide more information, and um, I'm going to turn this now over to Monica.
Great, thanks, Stafford. So if you can't hear me, let me know. Stafford and I are sharing a headset. But what I will say, just as a comment on the honorarium, I think it's something that we're really excited about. To Laura's question earlier about the West Ed study and some of the parameters around implementation, I think that's something that we see as this sort of helping to identify some different parameters based off of what we've seen in year one, which leads me to sort of what I'm supposed to be talking about today in terms of year one outcomes. So something that I wanted to note is we've received a little bit of data from everybody, but we haven't received all of the data also from almost everybody. So some of you have submitted the student level data on those who participated in spring coursework. Some of you have only submitted sort of the fall update and not the spring coursework data. Some of you haven't submitted the student survey data yet, and I understand that maybe it's on its way to me through USPS, but if you have not done so, I will be following up with you via email, and if you could just help us get that information, that'll help us get year one summaries to you as individual institutions, and will also help us with putting together a network-wide report that helps to summarize some of these lessons learned and some of the different ways that we've seen Khan Academy implemented. I think the implementation models that Tim just covered have been really fantastic, and we're really excited to have the opportunity to go into more depth on some of those implementation models within sort of this year one summary report. So that was just my comment on year one outcomes. I think there are a few other network specific updates that Stafford has. So you'll see some of these on this PowerPoint here, and I apologize that it's so small, but I'm trying to prevent it from being cut off because we've noticed that with some of the other presenters that sometimes the slides get cut off.
So let me start with we've rescheduled our networking meeting, and now it will take place on Thursday, September 25th at Middlesex Community College in Bedford. We'll be sending out more information about the meeting, about the time of the meeting, and the structure of the meeting next month. The other is that we will post on our website on Thursday a map that has been done doing an alignment between AccuPlacer math topics and Khan Academy. As many of you have noticed, these links have been broken multiple times as the site changes throughout the year. So we'll be posting that, and that may be most useful for institutions and faculty who are teaching boot camp programs both this summer and the beginning of the year. So we just wanted to let you know about that with a caveat. The caveat is that we may be updating that, or we will be updating that after August 1st. And I think after August 1st, we've been told by Naomi Davidson that no further changes can be anticipated for those links. I know it's frustrating. We've heard this from a number of faculty. And so we're going to, once again, I think it's a helpful tool to provide playlist. So we're going to post that again on our website. So it is now 2:01. And so this is a great opportunity to ask if there are any other questions that you may have. We're going to be posting this recording as soon as we can, and I'll let you know about that posting. We'll be emailing you the slides from Tim O'Connor's presentation, and so this is your opportunity. With that, I want to thank Naomi Davidson for joining us from California, Tim O'Connor, and I wish you all a good afternoon, and thanks very much for joining us.